President, on Iran, how confident are you that there will be a signing this weekend? Because you have come close to sealing a deal, but at the last minute it has fallen apart. And
it'll be soon, maybe this weekend.
That right there is a sitting U.S. president saying he doesn't want to bomb. He wants peace. He wants a deal stronger than war. Now, ask yourself one question. If the most powerful man on earth is begging for peace in both Ukraine and Iran, why is the killing still going on? The mainstream media will point fingers at Moscow or at Tehran. That's what they want you to believe. But today, we're going to follow the real trail. And when you see it, I promise you, you will never look at these wars the same way again. Stay with me, because this is the video the legacy media does not want you to watch. Right now, the United States is entangled in two major geopolitical crises simultaneously. Crisis 1, Ukraine, going on for over 4 years, hundreds of thousands dead, no end in sight. Crisis 2, Iran, a war that Trump himself said would last 4 to 6 weeks, now in its 4th month, with a nuclear deal still hanging in the balance. Two completely different regions, two completely different conflicts, two completely different sets of players on the surface. But here's what nobody is connecting for you. The same obstacle is blocking peace in both places. And that obstacle is not in Moscow. It's not in Tehran. It sits in a very old city in very old buildings with very old money and very old imperial ambitions. We're talking about London. Let's start with Ukraine, because this is where the blueprint is clearest. Last week, President Zelensky sent an open letter to Vladimir Putin offering direct talks. The legacy media called it a breakthrough. Peace, finally. But read it carefully, because buried inside is a two-punch attack. Punch number 1, Zelensky openly trashed the Anchorage summit, the Alaska meeting where Trump and Russian representatives began talking directly. He wrote that Ukrainian and European issues are not decided in Anchorage. He is openly dismissing Trump's peace effort. The American president's attempt at diplomacy thrown in the trash. Punch number 2. Zelensky then wrote that peace guarantors should be those who truly have the capacity to influence the situation, meaning Europe and the United Kingdom. Think about what he's saying. He's not calling for the United States to lead peace. He's calling for the same European powers who have spent the last 4 years fueling this war to now be the peacekeepers. That's not a peace proposal. That's a power play. And what did Zelensky do the moment that letter went public? He flew straight to London. He met with Prime Minister Starmer, with President Macron, with Chancellor Merz, and all three leaders read from the exact same script. Russia is collapsing. Putin is weak. Now is the time to double down. The same demands that have kept this war going for 5 years. And right on cue, the think tanks marched in. The Atlantic Council, which is essentially NATO's think tank, declared that Ukraine had just shown the whole world that Putin is losing control of the war. The Council on Foreign Relations, the British Empire's main foreign policy arm inside the United States, said the exact same thing, citing Russia's losses, declaring a turning point. This isn't journalism. This is coordination. This is a synchronized narrative being pushed out to the public to justify continuing the war. And while the think tanks were doing their work, the U.S. Congress stepped in to do the dirty work. The U.S. House of Representatives just passed a bill to keep money and weapons flowing into Ukraine over the Trump administration's objections. Its chief sponsor, New York Democrat Gregory Meeks, who happens to be a current member of the British-American Parliamentary Group. Let that sink in. This is a formal body that literally hotwires the U.S. Congress to the British Parliament. It was created in 1937, right at the moment Britain was cementing its grip on American foreign policy. And it is funded directly by the British government. And who leads that group? Prime Minister Keir Starmer. So while everyone is screaming about AIPAC money and Israeli lobbying, and yes, that's a real conversation, they are completely missing the role of the British government itself, which has been systematically working against Trump's peace agenda in both Ukraine and Iran. Now, here is the part of this story that should genuinely stop you cold. Recent documents released by the British Parliament part of the ongoing investigation into disgraced former British ambassador to Washington, Peter Mandelson, revealed something extraordinary. Mandelson, who had to resign because of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, was Britain's ambassador to Washington throughout most of 2025. He was the man managing the UK-US relationship during the most critical period of the Ukraine negotiations. But even more explosive than Mandelson is what the parliamentary investigation revealed about King Charles himself. When Trump and J.D. Vance publicly confronted Zelensky in the Oval Office in February 2025, that famous explosive meeting, King Charles wanted to cancel Trump's state visit to the United Kingdom. Multiple senior Whitehall sources confirmed it. The king was, in the words of one source, jittery about hosting Trump. Another source put it even more directly. The king did not want to do it. Why? Because Trump had been tough on Zelensky. Let that really sink in. The King of England, whose entire job includes maintaining the special relationship that keeps America acting as the enforcer of British foreign policy, was willing to blow up that relationship to protect Zelensky and the Ukraine war machine. And it's not a one-off. King Charles has now met with Zelensky 7 times, including most recently on June 8th of this year at Windsor Castle. 7 meetings, more than any other foreign leader on earth. The King of England has met Zelensky more than he's met any other world leader. Ask yourself, why? To understand why, you have to go back over a century. This is what historians call the Great Game, Britain's centuries-long obsession with controlling the Eurasian heartland. The strategy is simple. Russia must be weakened, always. Because if Russia is strong, it can project power across Eurasia, and that limits British imperial reach. So the empire's strategy has been to push NATO closer and closer to Russia's borders, arm proxy states, and manufacture conflicts that drain Russian power. Ukraine is not new. Ukraine is a pawn in a game Britain has been playing since the 1800s. They push the missiles closer. Russia says no, and then they feed the proxy into the fire and call it a fight for democracy. That's what happened again. The Anchorage summit, Trump's attempt to open direct U.S.-Russia dialogue with Ukraine as a nation at the table, not a proxy, threatened to end that game. So London said no. Zelensky said no. The think tanks said no. And the British-funded Congressional allies voted no. And this is not the first time this playbook was used. Go back to April 2022. Just weeks after the Russian invasion began, Ukraine and Russia were this close to a peace deal in Istanbul, Turkey. The head of Ukraine's own negotiating delegation, David Arakhamia, confirmed it himself in a bombshell interview in November 2023. He said Russia was ready to end the war in exchange for Ukrainian neutrality. No NATO membership. The deal was basically done. And then Boris Johnson flew to Kiev on April 9, 2022. And according to Arakhamia, and confirmed independently by former Zelensky advisor Oleksiy Arestovich, by Turkish President Erdogan, and by the Turkish foreign minister, Johnson told Zelensky they should not sign anything with them at all and just fight. Turkey, the host of those peace talks, was stunned. The Turkish foreign minister said publicly that after the NATO foreign ministers' meeting, he got the impression there were those within NATO who want the war to continue. A peace deal that could have saved hundreds of thousands of lives, killed by a British prime minister's visit. And now in 2026, the same script is running again. Now switch to Iran and watch the exact same architecture play out. Vice President J.D. Vance said it out loud on national television. Israel may like the Iran deal, they may not like it, but fundamentally, we think this is in the best interest of the United States of America. The Vice President of the United States just publicly separated American interests from Israeli preferences on Iran. This is extraordinary, and it comes alongside reports that Israel may have been spying on Trump's own Iran negotiators and Trump's leaked confrontations with Netanyahu. Trump's own national security strategy now says America is a sovereign nation that treats every country as an equal, that including Israel. That's a seismic shift from the old playbook, and the old imperial architecture hates it, because if Trump treats Iran as a nation, not a proxy, and gets a deal that's stronger than a bomb, then the entire forever war machine is exposed as unnecessary. Here's the through line that the mainstream media will never draw for you. In Ukraine, Britain cultivates a proxy, arms it, blocks peace, calls it democracy. In the Middle East, Britain cultivates proxies for decades, and the American establishment has historically played its assigned role as enforcer. In both places, Trump is trying to treat these as issues between sovereign nations with legitimate interests, not pieces on an imperial chessboard, and that is what terrifies the people running this system. A world where Iran can function as a nation again. A world where Russia is allowed to have legitimate interests. A world where Israel functions in the interests of its own people, not as a tool of a broader geopolitical game. A world where Ukraine gets peace instead of being bled dry as a proxy. That's the world Trump's approach, whatever you think of him, is pointing toward. And the British imperial system, with its think tanks, its parliamentary groups, its ambassadors, and its king, is fighting it every step of the way. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. The next time you see a headline blaming Russia for blocking peace in Ukraine, ask who funded the think tank that wrote that headline. The next time you see a story about Iran being the obstacle to a nuclear deal, ask who benefits from the war continuing. The next time you see Zelensky flying to London and meeting with King Charles, ask yourself why the King of England is personally invested in this proxy war. Because the answers are all pointing in the same direction, not east, west, specifically northwest, toward a small island with centuries of experience turning other nations' blood into imperial power. Trump sees it, Vance sees it, and now you see it too. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to see it, and hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning.